Season 12 is entirely new for me. I've never watched any of the episodes in the season, so I had to watch them in a pretty short amount of time. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really like it. In fact, it's probably my least favorite season in the entire show. The show just doesn't work for me anymore, but I know others like it, which is cool. So I'm just gonna start the list, and maybe you can see where I'm coming from. The nitwitting is just Patrick and his friends being stupid and gross. It's not fun to watch, and there's just too much weird stuff for my liking. This episode feels straight out of seasons 6 through 8 in terms of quality. In fact, it would probably be the worst episodes in all of those seasons. There's just not a single redeeming factor. Gary's Got Legs was an episode that just shocked me when I first watched it. It started fine, but when SpongeBob and Gary started switching roles, it started to turn me off. I mean, look at SpongeBob here. It's just gross looking, and it goes in for way too long. Well, they finally did it. They made an episode about hiccups. I mean, who wanted this? This episode is extremely boring, and just makes me hate hiccups even more than I already do. Which is actually kind of impressive now that I think about it. Hey look, it's the girl from the chocolate episode. Biddy sitting is just annoying. The chocolate old lady returns as a main character, and her gross appearance makes for a gross episode that never gets interesting. And if I would describe it in one word, it would be gross. Maybe I would like SpongeBob's bad habit more if I could actually relate to it. I've never had a habit of biting my nails, so this episode was just empty, and also pretty gross. Sandy's nutty nieces is just really annoying. The idea is fine, SpongeBob babysitting Sandy's nieces. The problem is that the nieces are very annoying and ruin what could have been an okay episode. The hankering could have been so much better. It was a chance for Mr. Krabs and Plankton to actually connect with something. That thing being Chum. It doesn't sound appealing, but I'm sure the show could have pulled it off when it was in its prime. Instead, we just got more gross stuff, which is not cool. I don't know why Sandy narrates Gary and Spot, but she does, and it ruins the episode that had very little potential in the first place. My Two Krabses is a not so good episode about Mrs. Puff going on a date with Chum Mr. Krabs. The episode is really awkward, and the jokes about the Chum version of Krabs didn't really land for me. Plankton's old chum does sound kind of boring on paper, and the actual episode is boring too. There's a lot of chum episodes in this season, and the majority of them, if not all of them, are terrible. One Trick Sponge is about SpongeBob annoying people about his magic trick. It's kinda impressive how they can make an episode so uneventful, so I'll bump it up some spots for that. Patrick's tantrum proves something that everybody knows. He's an idiot. The problem with this season, and just modern SpongeBob in general, is that there's very few things the show can do with these characters. We already know all about them, and they just keep doing stuff we expect them to do, and it's kind of boring. It's not really the makers of the show's fault, it's just that I don't really think a show like this can go as far as it can if it doesn't introduce a new character or something like that, because it's getting kind of boring of just seeing Patrick be stupid, and all the other characters just doing the exact same things they always do. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember Kooky Cooks, so I'll put it at this part on the list because it can't be that bad if I don't remember it. I mean, I remember most of the terrible ones, so this one must be at least fine. For my explanation of Bubble Bass's tab, just listen to my explanation of Kooky Cooks, or Kooky Cooks, because I have the same reason. I do not remember this at all. Pineapple RV is another episode where Squidward gets screwed by Patrick and SpongeBob. At least Squidward tried to be nice, which is the first positive thing I have to say about an episode in this season so far, so that's pretty cool. Can only go up from here. I have no idea why Krusty Concessionaires is elongated. It's extremely boring, and random stuff just happens that have nothing to do with each other. There's too many storylines, and too many ones that are not interesting. Though I did enjoy the band they made up, they were pretty cool. Quarantine Crabs is banned, I guess. My totally legal website I watched it on had it, so that was news to me. Yeah, this episode is mid, just like everything else we'll be talking about for the next few episodes. The Goofy Newbie is another Goofy Goober episode. This one uses the setting better than Pat Nokia, but the episode isn't as good. Patrick is too annoying, and SpongeBob's appearance isn't anything special. We're at this point where a Patrick-centered episode is really hard to do, and usually doesn't come out very good. Broken Alarm is an episode about SpongeBob getting a new alarm, because his other one broke. Which sounds pretty cool, but the result is just mediocre. It's just boring to get through and not very engaging. I do like that they actually made an episode about the alarm, because, I mean, it's pretty hard to do. Everyone is an idiot in Insecurity Yards. SpongeBob and Patrick are total morons, even more so than usual, and Squidward was just pissing me off. I mean, do you really think you can sneak in your own painting? Well, he did actually, so I'll give him some credit for that. Breakin' is a short episode, and it's mid. It's not lower because it was easier to digest, and I like the idea of a hidden room in the Krusty Krab. But man, they just don't do anything with it, and the room could have been a lot more unique. More piss potential in a season that's full of it. Lighthouse Louie is literally just the episode where SpongeBob cleans up Bubble Bass's basement, except he actually finishes cleaning it. And the rest is just every other episode where SpongeBob destroys the town. Very lacking of originality in this episode. Plankton gets an intern in Plankton's Intern. Hey look, Pat Hart Squid does the thing again where Patrick becomes Squidward. I mean, the first time it happened wasn't even good, so of course this one isn't either. Also, they really make it clear that Squidward sucks at everything in this season. Stormy Weather is about SpongeBob befriending a literal cloud. At least this one's creative and not a copy of other episodes, I guess. The Ballad of Filthy Muck is another Patrick episode. Kinda. At least we think it is, until it reveals it's not Patrick. This episode is pretty boring and kinda strange. Average SpongeBob episode, not really much to say. Boss for a Day is another episode where SpongeBob becomes the boss of the Krusty Krab. Except he actually bosses the restaurant, which was cool. But the problem was that these losers were losers and needed SpongeBob to do everything. And Mr. Krabs blamed SpongeBob for it, which sucked. I mean, no one is this dumb, other than SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob becomes a cool guy during Mind the Gap, and it's not terrible. Once again, this episode points out how bad Squidward is at everything. I did like the scenes where SpongeBob was killing it on the stage, but everything else was mid. And yeah, there's just an extreme amount of Squidward bullying here. Not even just from SpongeBob and Patrick. I mean, everything is just insulting his talent. But he's not even that bad. Like, I don't get it. I can't believe there's never been a turtle episode before Shell Games. I mean, I never would have even realized it. I guess I thought there was, but there's not. And honestly, the fact that this was the first of its kind made it a lot better. They didn't do as much as I would have liked, but the episode wasn't bad. Just stop using Patrick as the main character and the show would improve heavily. Most of these Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes would be a lot better with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy in it, but obviously that can't happen. And Dirty Bubble Returns is another example of that. The Dirty Bubble himself is pretty funny, so that makes this watchable. But, I mean, it would be so much better if we saw the old heroes and all that stuff. And there still hasn't been a good episode I've talked about yet. Everything else is just like, whatever. The Krusty Slammer is a solid episode about the Krusty Krab becoming a jail. And by solid, I mean not terrible. It's still not great and pretty boring. Even the show acknowledges that Plankton and Mr. Krabs working together has been done before in the Krusty Bucket. Sure, the idea has been done before, but at least it's not that bad of an idea. I mean, like, they rehash ideas that weren't even good in the first place, but this one's pretty good. I did enjoy the mix of Plankton and Krabs into the same guy, but the whole episode just never got me engaged. Knock knock, who's there is fine. SpongeBob is a bit too stupid, but it makes for some solid jokes. My problem is obviously Mr. Krabs knew that SpongeBob wasn't going to open the door for him, so why did he say to never open the door for anyone? Why not just say that he can only open it for him? It made the episode too predictable, and that made a lot of it pretty boring. There's way too much Bubble Bass in this season. He's a better side character than main character, but I actually didn't mind Swamp Mates that much. Him and Patrick work pretty well. It's just, once again, I don't like Bubble Bass, so it made my experience watching the episode a lot worse. I liked the idea, but I just wish they chose another character for it. Farmer Bob is up next. I enjoy this episode, kinda. I didn't hate it. It got really weird at the end of the episode with the alien crap, but overall it wasn't nearly as bad as some of the other episodes in this season, so that's a good thing. Senior Discount just misses out on the top 10, and the whole episode is about old people, so it's kind of impressive that this episode ranks so high, because I do not like old people. King Plankton is probably the worst top 10 episode in the entire show. The only reason I put this episode high is because I like the monkey dudes in the fishbowl. The story is whatever. I mean, I just like monkeys, they're cool. A Cabin in the Kelp is a relatively enjoyable episode. The Gal Pals are back, but this time SpongeBob also had a significant role in the story. The 4 Gal Pals are pretty funny together. I just didn't love the actual story in the episode, but it's not bad. It does have some funny moments. SpongeBob in Random Land is just a more weird version of Pizza Delivery, and it's not that bad. Pizza Delivery is better, but it's also better than 99% of SpongeBob episodes, so that's not really a knock on this one that I'm talking about right now. I enjoy the setting, and they did some fun stuff with it. So I actually do like SpongeBob in Random Land. Plankton actually succeeded in coming to terms with being a parent in Karen's baby, and it's actually pretty satisfying. I liked seeing the kid grow up and Plankton and Karen becoming attached to it. I would say that this one, the previous one, and the rest of the episodes are good episodes that I actually do like. Everybody loves SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, and I totally get it. SpongeBob and Patrick go to the surface, and it's really cool. There's lots of cameos, obviously the actual cast being the most iconic ones. My problem, and why it's not even higher, was that they just didn't keep the unique ideas interesting after their original idea. That doesn't really make sense, but basically what I'm saying is, the whole thing was just going for shock value, and it didn't really have as much substance as I would have liked in a special episode. But it wasn't bad at all. In fact, it was good. It just wasn't great. Who Are Zoo is really entertaining. The idea is really interesting. As I do enjoy zoos in real life, it would make sense I would enjoy them in the show. While he didn't stay at the zoo for long, SpongeBob creating his own zoo was interesting in its own way. I also liked the zookeeper and his arc. He was very funny. The Ghost of Plankton is a dream pair-up. The two main villains, the Flying Dutchman and Plankton, get to know each other. They don't try and do anything evil. The Flying Dutchman just teaches Plankton on how to become a ghost. They work really well together, and with an interesting story, this episode is actually really good. I'm not sure why Plankton just gave up on his plan though, because it was a completely flawless plan, and he completely missed out. Squid on a Bus is just a really fun episode. Squidward is the star, and after he finishes being a Karen after the first few minutes, he kills it. He starts beefing with the bus driver on whether he can become one, and the rest of the episode is Squidward trying not to lose his sanity after becoming a bus driver. I enjoyed the bus driver character, and the story was great. This one is quite a bit better than Ghosts of Plankton, and number 2 is quite a bit better than this. Okay, Dream Hoppers is an actual banger. I was basically dead at this point of the season. I mean, it is the last episode, and I wasn't expecting much based off of the other episodes in the season. But I was very surprised, and it was a good one. There's no dialogue. It's just a more fun version of Sleepy Time. The whole episode is animated amazingly, and it tells its story with no dialogue at all. But despite there being no talking, it's entertaining for the whole runtime. It does help that it is short, as there's not as much time to screw it up, but I'm very happy that this episode exists. It's just not good enough to be number 1. Handemonium is actually an amazing episode. It's a cut above the rest in a season that is not that good. This episode is long, but I think its runtime works perfectly for the episode. An episode about the chum bucket glove sounds kinda weird, but they do some awesome stuff with it, especially when they brought in the hand from the intro song. There's so many creative hand jokes, which sound weird on paper, but work so well with the story in this episode, and the whole thing just has a higher stake, as the glove is an actual threat to the city, which makes it all the better when the hand and glove duke it out at the end of the episode. This is a standout episode in an otherwise bad season.